Today is Friday, February 25th, 2011, and my name is Anne-Marie Poise. I am interviewing Elizabeth Nick, who is a current and active member of the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. She served 2 terms as League president. She taught sociology and anthropology at Front Range Community College. The interview is being filmed by Anne-Marie Poise. So to start out, Liz, could you state when and where you were born?
I was born in 1939 in Kansas City, Kansas.
Thank you. And moving on to sort of the League history, could you tell us when and why you came to Boulder County, and since we are in Louisville, Louisville?
Right. My husband worked for IBM, and he was transferred to this area in 1983. And at the time, I was teaching full-time at Broward Community College in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And so, of course, when he was transferred, we moved to this area. And we chose Louisville because at that time, it was the midpoint between his place of work at IBM in Boulder, and it was close to, in between Front Range Community College and IBM at the time. And since I was finishing up my doctorate, I could use the facilities at CU. So that's why we chose to live in Louisville.
And when you came, were there any outstanding characteristics of this community, Boulder, that you picked up on? Any observations of community life here?
In 1983, Louisville at that time didn't have a very large population. And in fact, Cherry Street was actually part of the sheep farm, because I remember walking along that road, 2-lane. So I've seen a lot of changes within Louisville. And Boulder, once I joined or transferred my membership from the League in Florida to here, then I began to learn a lot about Boulder. And that's why I continued in the League, was to find out about these communities, because I didn't know anything about these communities.
So the League was like a point of entry?
Yes, it was. Very much so, because since I was a League member in Florida, then I could transfer to this area.
So could you tell us a little bit about your involvement with the League in Florida, and perhaps any background factors that led you to join the League in Florida?
We lived in Boca Raton, Florida. That's where my husband worked. And in, I think it was 1977 is when I actually joined the League, because I wanted to learn more about the government at that time. And so that's why I joined. And of course they get you involved immediately, and within a year or two I was on the board. We still do that today. New people who join, we try to get them on the board immediately or involved in one of the committees or some activity. And it wasn't long then that I also became president, about a year or two before we actually moved here in '83. So it was the League of Women Voters of South Palm Beach County. And that's where I also met Ann Norwood. She was also a member of the League there, and her husband worked for IBM. And they also moved back to Boulder. He was also transferred back to Boulder. And so that's really began the friendship between Ann Norwood and me. She was one of our mentors. I think one of your questions had about mentors, and Ann Norwood certainly was.
Since you mentioned that, can you tell us a little about that mentoring process?
Basically, it was just answering my questions and guiding me along of what the League really was all about.
And then that became the basis then for a friendship that has lasted obviously
Yes,
many years.
many years, yes.
And many more conversations
Right.
about league activities and leadership and the work that you do. So basically, your entry into the league was really out of your own particular interest
Yes,
in how democracy works.
and to learn more about the community in which I was living at that time.
Okay. So when you came to Boulder and immediately joined up and found out about the community, were there any, and over the years, were there any strong points of comparison between the league in Florida and the league in Boulder?
They were very similar in that the women were very active in the work of the community. In South Palm Beach, of course, lived a couple of miles from the ocean, so it was to save the beaches at that time from development. And the voter service activities, I worked in the voter service activities, so it was the same here in this area. And so immediately, of course, within a year or two, I was on the board. And I honestly cannot remember which portfolio I had at that time. But I remember going into Boulder, and Grace Osgood, who is now deceased, she used to have the meetings in her home in Boulder. And those board meetings at that time would run till about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I learned much about the city of Boulder at that time because it was still the City of Boulder League at that time. So it was learning all about the city of Boulder. However, since I lived in Louisville, I wanted to apply these, to take action on these positions, the league positions that we have, but we really couldn't do so because they didn't apply to any other city except the local city of Boulder. And so that's why I began to ask for change, to change the name of Boulder Valley, which really was the same as the Boulder Valley School District. And so it could include all those communities, including Louisville, so that we could begin studying the structure of the city government here in Louisville, which is different from the city of Boulder.
So more or less, you and perhaps other members that lived outside of Boulder
Yes.
started to move towards a more inclusive approach for basically the whole county.
No, not the county that time, just
Okay.
the Boulder Valley School District, because there was a Longmont League at that time. And so throughout the years, we tried to bring the two leagues together, but it really wasn't until a couple of years ago that the leaguers in Longmont, their numbers were down, and so they decided to merge the two leagues. And that's when we became the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. So now it includes the whole county, all the communities within the county.
And has that been a really big change for the organization?
A big change? I don't think so, but we do, some of the Longmont members now are active, and the president now lives in Longmont, although she formerly lived in the city of Boulder.
Yeah, that's Lynn Wegley.
Lynn Wegley, correct. And she now lives in Longmont. She's the current president. So we do have some transfers, that is transfers from leagues from other states to move into Longmont, and they become involved, but we also have new members now coming into Longmont.
Are you involved in other community organizations?
Yes. I belong to the American Association of University Professors. I joined there when I was at Front Range Community College. I actually helped found with Catherine Schilling the part-time faculty organization. I've been adjunct at Front Range Community College for many years. Even though I taught 4 courses, and the full load was 5 courses, but that's the way it's done. And so from there, eventually in, I think it was 2000, 2001, faculty members began the American Association of University Professors for full-time and adjunct, and it covered all 3 campuses. And now, of course, since I'm retired from Front Range, I no longer am an active member except at the state level. I've been secretary-treasurer of that organization at the state level, but my term is ending actually at the end of this month. I will no longer be secretary-treasurer. I think right now that's the only other civic or community organization that I belong to.
Well, the fact that, you bring up that you were a teacher at Front Range, I'm wondering, as people point to the changing role of women in society during the period that we're talking about, how you juggled sort of having a career and working in the league and your family life.
Sometimes it was difficult, but the meetings, the board meetings, were always in the evening, as they still are, to accommodate those who have full-time employment. So that isn't difficult. And many activities actually took place on the weekend, like gathering signatures on petitions and things like that, or candidate forums. They were always at night. So, and it always was fun and exciting, really, to participate. So I think the league does accommodate that, and the different. We have what's called unit meetings or small groups, and we also started the small group in Louisville, and so sometimes the meetings were during the day, but now we actually have a dinner meeting, and we meet at the evening. It's the only evening unit that we have. So I think that the league does accommodate those who have full-time employment, and if they can't really, if they don't have time to be on the board, or their work really is really full-time for them, then they can always do other things for the league that don't take up so much time.
So what you're saying is that there is space, even with social change and
Yes.
women's changing role.
Exactly, and now with technology, it's amazing because so much is done by email. And so that has made the work so much easier to communicate by email. Decisions are made by email, board decisions. So I think it makes it so much easier.
So another important change, as long as you brought it up, is sort of the communication revolution.
It is. It truly is, because in the early days, even here, you had so-called phone trees. And so that's how you notified members to take action on a particular issue, was by calling. And I know we spent many hours calling members. Today, email makes it so much easier.
And then makes the organization probably very effective too, or perhaps more effective, because members can spend their time
elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
Yes. Yeah, they can.
And in that sense, I guess, as you said, it does accommodate the many roles that women play.
Yes.
Now with full-time work and mixing family and also wanting to be involved in the community. Well, I would also like to talk a little bit more about your interests and your roles in the organization. And I know that obviously you've worked at the Boulder Valley level and also at the state level. So could you tell me about some of the roles that you've played in the organization and the work that you did?
On the local level, the league we call local, state, and national. And at the local level, I've been on the board at various times, and I've been president. I was president in South Palm Beach County, and here I've been president also 2 times. And the last was 6 years ago, and then I served for 2 years, and then my term was up in 2004. No, 11, 7. It was 2007 when my term was up, excuse me. And then I've been on the state board for 4 years. So that's 2011, right? I was president before then. I'm sorry, 2005 to 2007 I was president again. And then I've also been active at the state level on the state board for 4 years, and my term ends this May. And I'm taking a break from the state board. That I've been voter editor, or the newsletter editor, for these 4 years. On the local level, I've been president. I've also worked in voter service, finance, raising funds. That was, golly, in the 1990s, I think I did that. But I still participate in voter service activities, candidate forums, ballot issues, doing the pros and cons, especially for Louisville. So that's the main things that I have done.
Well, great. Could you tell us a little bit about your role as president and what, because that always sounds like a fairly, important leadership role. So, what that experience was like?
A good experience. The president of the league speaks for the league. So anytime we took action, like in affordable housing, then you write a letter or you testify before the city council about the issue. Or sometimes if it's in the city of Boulder, since I lived in Louisville, sometimes the person who was on the housing committee, she would actually speak about the issue to city council because she had much more knowledge than I did, even though we all studied the issue. And so basically my role as president was to preside over the meetings, to speak for the league publicly, and to make sure that everything got done. But it really was easy because the board members are also dedicated people and they will fulfill their duties. And so everyone really works together to do this. Otherwise they wouldn't be in league.
So then it's not that difficult maybe to get people to be president.
Well,
given.
That's another thing, that it seems like in any organization I've been in, that it's always difficult to find someone to step in the leadership role as president, even though they are very capable of doing it. And this is how basically we've gotten women to be president, is to really encourage them that they do have the skills. And once they get into the position, they usually will do another term because they've learned the ropes, so to speak, and I think they actually enjoy it because you then interact also with the state league and also the National League as president. So easy? No. I'm on the nominating committee right now, although Lynn is going to continue for another year. So I think it's really encouraging women, especially the new members, that they have the skills necessary to do the position or carry out the responsibilities of the position.
And just from people's observations, they know that there's just a lot of support for the president, so that's reassuring as well.
It is. And if you have that support, it makes the president's job really easy.
Do you have any outstanding memories of any challenges or happy times or special work that went on when you were president?
When I was president.
Mm-hmm.
I think basically in taking, deciding positions, whether we wanted to support or oppose a particular issue, that league members have also very good ideas and definite positions on things. And so many times the committee would present the facts that we should support or oppose a particular issue locally. And then the board would have to decide whether the league would actually support or oppose. So many times during the board meetings, this would lead to very lively discussions, because you always had people who opposed the idea or who supported it. But in the end, you basically came to consensus, or everyone agreed, because the facts were presented, and so you're persuading people. But it's also based on league positions, that we study an issue and then we have these positions that we can either support or oppose an issue, and basically that's the deciding argument, that we have this position and so we need to take action. And so I think those were the exciting times when we had to make that decision for a particular issue, and then you go out and you support it or oppose it.
Right. So do you think that could you describe the decision-making process? Because for many organizations that is a huge challenge to
Yes.
to accomplish that. Could you just describe a little bit more that
Okay.
you have this, it seemingly a very effective decision-making process?
Right. Basically, we start out with consensus, and, basically you start out with an idea that someone is for a particular issue. And so we have what's called program planning. It's usually in January. I'm talking about the local level now.
Mm-hmm.
And they propose a particular issue, to, let's say, affordable housing, that we don't have a position on, although we do. Let's say at the beginning there was no position on affordable housing. And so you form a committee, they get the facts, and then it's approved that we can do this study at our annual meeting, and then they begin the study. And it may take them a while, maybe a year or less, to gather the facts. And then the league members actually discuss the issue, and we come to what's called a consensus, that we all have to agree in the end that this is going to be our statement. And then once we have that statement in, like, affordable housing, which we do now, then in the future we can either oppose or support a particular proposal by the city councils in regard to affordable housing. And so that's how we come up with these issues. We may not have a position on every issue, and sometimes this frustrates people who want us to take a position on an issue. But we only can take a position if we've studied it previously and have come up with this position. On the national level, immigration. We did not have a position on immigration, but maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a great need for it. So members throughout the United States said, we need to study immigration and come up with a position. And so nationally, this is what we did. And so locally, we still have an immigration committee. And so members met, and then our consensus was sent to the national level, and then they look at all the consensus from all the leagues, and that's how they come up with it. And that's how we also do it at the state level. The state also has positions, but we go through the same process, that the local league has to study it, and then you come to consensus. They send that decision or consensus to the state level, then the state has to look at all the leagues within the state and see if there is an agreement or disagreement, and then the league comes out with a statement saying this is our issue. And this, every year we come out with this membership handbook, and it has all our local positions in detail, and then it just has a summary of the state and national. Now, at the local level, we can't take action if the state has come up with a position and it applies, we can apply it locally. And the same, like immigration is a national position, we can also apply it then, or take action if a situation arises. That probably would be done at the state level, since immigration is state or federal for the most part. But that's how we make our decisions. And then if someone says, well, can you support this or oppose it, we have to go back to our program positions to see if we actually have a position, if we can support or oppose it. And this is the basis for it. Sometimes, you know, it can go either way, and so this is when you really have to look at the intent of the position. But that's how we come up with it.
And are there times then that sometimes the position is also changed?
Yes. Okay. Over time, and we also have a history of our positions, of when it was first adopted, and then if it's changed. Yes, over time, I think some of the social policy positions have changed over time, and that committee will say, you know, this is an old position, we really do need to change it. Or we also have a very active schools committee. And so basically, that also is the same thing. So positions do change over time.
And so there is a very clear framework for everyone to work within.
Yes, a very clear framework, and that's how it's organized at the national, state, and local level, so that we can only take action if there is a position.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the state, since you've been able to work there for at least these 4 years?
Yes, and actually I was on the state board before that too.
Okay.
Basically, they work on state issues, and just like the local league, we have two branches, so to speak. We have advocacy and we have voter service. And so at the state level, it's also the same, that there are voter service issues, such as looking at, may have forums for congressional candidates. And we do publications. Ballot issues. Ballot issues is big. We publish a ballot issue pamphlet, which gives the pros and cons. We also do this on the local level. And the state level is very much into advocacy. That is, we have a legislative action group that meet every couple of weeks, and they actually, we have a paid lobbyist that lobbies at the state legislature, and then leaguers who volunteer their time, go listen to the bills, and will testify at the state legislature. So this is really what the state league does, that we focus on state issues. It's the local leagues that focus on local issues, but at the state level, we focus on state issues.
Which might be transportation.
Yes.
Maybe health.
Could be health, could be transportation. They look at bills that is being proposed in the state legislature, child care, schools, and then they go back to their positions to see if we can support or oppose it. And the State League publishes a legislative letter. It's every 2 weeks, and they list the bills that we support or oppose, or no position sometimes. And then it's published. It's available on the league website, the State League website. So it's available for everyone, even if they don't subscribe to it. Excuse me, I got a cough. Excuse me, okay.
Just in talking about this, some of the issues, would you say that would you say there's an emphasis in state issues that the league has, or is it just about everything?
It's varies. The main topics, what are natural resources, government, social policy. And then you would have to look under each of these to see where the emphasis begins on that. So it varies.
I just, thinking of it as a women's organization, I didn't know if there was any sort of focus on issues that might impact women and families.
No, I don't think so. I think maybe no, I don't think so, because they do look at government, because the mission of the League really is to educate and then take action. I mean, that's why the League came into being, was to, once women got the vote, was to educate women and then take action. So I've never felt, or in my time in League, that it was solely for women's issues at all. That rather it looked at government, the fairness of government, equality, transportation issues, court system. So I think these are a variety of issues. I think a lot of it has to do with fairness and equality on the issues that we take up. But that is my opinion on that, okay? Sure. But I've never felt that it was one-sided or a particular area that we were going to look at.
Right, so you can look at everything.
Everything, right, under those, the headings: government, natural resources, social policy. One of our members, Tess McNulty, was really into water, and she was quite influential in the state about water issues, and she's now dead, but she was considered the expert in Colorado on water issues. So, and she worked at the local level, but mostly at the state level. And they at one time issued I can't remember the exact title, but it was a water book. And it was republished several times and updated. But she really pushed for that, and she was on state boards, I believe, and so she really worked on that.
Now, you said that you wrote the newsletter for the state, at the state level?
Right.
And is that a monthly publication?
No, it's quarterly.
It's quarterly.
And now it's 8 pages, and it is sent electronically for those who want it electronically, but we still mail it to many people, many of our members. But of course, also at the state level, much of the communication is done by email, so that the newsletter, in some sense, is a wrap-up, because local league presidents and others on the committee, like social policy, they've already gotten it from their social policy person on the state level, and so everything is done by email. So the newsletter really is I would consider it a wrap-up or an announcement of things to come in a couple of months, and to alert people what's coming.
So it's one way of really keeping all the locals sort of on the same page, or
Yes.
all the membership in the
All
state.
the membership in the state on the same level. Because, of course, you only have, 8 to 10 people on a local board. They are quite knowledgeable, they know what's going on, but a lot of the local members don't. But each local league also has a monthly newsletter, usually, that they send out. And again, the Boulder County League does it electronically. I think there's maybe 60 people who still want it by regular mail, but the rest receive it electronically.
So in your role as the newsletter editor, do you find yourself going down to Denver frequently during, the legislative season?
No, I'm not involved in the Legislative Action Committee.
Okay.
What I do is that I read what is called the leader's email that we get from the National League president. And that comes out weekly, and I think it's weekly. And what I see in there is what the National League is doing. And
Okay.
I will, that's usually advocacy, and then I will put that in the newsletter. I think the last newsletter I had whole page on what the National League is doing. The National League is working much on the requirement of the voter ID, making people go through hoops in registration. Of course, the League opposes this. We want people to be able to vote easily. And so that's in the newsletter. Basically, that's what it does. And so a lot of the communication, again, is by email. So the only time I'm in Denver really is to attend the state board meetings, which are bi-monthly, and attend league functions. And that's about the only time I go to Denver.
Okay.
So it's not too much.
Well, it still sounds like producing this newsletter quarterly is actually a tremendous service. So, and probably brings out other talents that you have in writing and organizing. So that's probably a great gift. Turning now, by the way, just as a point of information, were you ever like on the national board or involved in any way in the national organization?
No, the only time is when I've attended several of the National League conventions.
And what are those like?
Oh, they're wonderful, because you meet leaguers all around the country, and they are very active within their leagues. And at the national convention, this is when you have the opportunity maybe to change the bylaws. I was at one of the earlier national conventions when it was proposed to change the name of the League of Women Voters because we allowed men. That bylaw was changed to allow men to become members. And there was a heated debate, and I think it's marvelous. They have the microphones, those who oppose, and run quite efficiently. And but this has come up time and again at the national conventions. But the League of Women Voters is a registered trademark, and they did not want to lose it for some other organization to take it over. So and the men also said, keep the name League of Women Voters, because it is so nationally known for that. Leaguers will also have meetings to come up with a program issue that hasn't been recommended by the National League, and this may start with the electronic age now. This may start way ahead of time before to get other leagues to support their idea. And so this, I think it's quite exciting, and to meet leaguers from around the nation. And I know that new members who have gone, relatively new members, who were on the local board and went to the national convention, they were so excited when they came back. And so we always try to get members who are active on the board to get to the national convention because of the enthusiasm they have when they return. So I think it's quite important to have them.
And does it meet usually in Washington, or?
It varies.
It varies.
I think, the convention is every 2 years. Mm-hmm. So 2 years, I think, was it in Portland? No, it was in Atlanta a year ago in 2010. And then maybe in 2 years from now, maybe back in Washington. So it alternates. So it's quite exciting. The State League has its convention this May. And so the League of Women Voters of Colorado will have their convention. And then you have the delegates that come. You can go as an observer, but you basically have delegates based upon the number of members in your local league. And that's also true at the National League. You have delegates that can actually vote.
So at the state convention, some decisions are made.
Oh, yes. Some decisions are made about a program. We're still looking at this, but what are there going to be a new program study item? And so this will be decided at the state level, and that's how we also decided the national level. So the national level, they have national convention is every 2 years, and the state league is every 2 years, but it's not in the same year. So this year, in 2011, is the state convention, and then in 2012 will be the national. I guess you could say even years is national, odd years is the state convention.
Do you have any sense, since you have a bigger view of the organization, given all your roles, whether Colorado, compared to other states, is, or just say what the comparison is in terms of participation and activism to other states?
It has been said that Colorado is a very strong league, that we have very active members, and compared to some other states. And I think it's because a lot of the members are on the Front Range. But really we have members also on the Western Slope. But the members tend to be active and participate. And so right now, the Colorado League is very strong.
Well, it sure shows in terms of the league in Boulder County. So
Yes, Boulder County, the league is very strong, yes.
Too. Are there other things you'd like to mention about the state or your participation in the state league?
Participation at the board meetings. I do attend the board meetings. I'm also, other committees also, then you participate in those. And so basically, that's about all I've done on the state level. So I also work on the website. I prepare material to give to the webmaster, and she's the one that puts it up on the website. I am not the webmaster, but she is. And actually, that will become part of the communications director after my term is up, June 1st. She will take over. The reason for that is that at the beginning, the executive director put up the website. She really didn't have time to do it, and so we got someone, Rebecca Tolle, who was actually a member of our league at that time. She was working on websites, so she was the one that put the first one up. And then a year ago, Karen Boaster, she's now the webmaster, and Rebecca had recommended her, and she is now the webmaster, and she does a terrific job, and she redesigned the website, and the updating sometimes is not her fault, but rather mine if I don't get the updates to her. I think that's the challenge of always updating the website on that. So that's, yes, I do that.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of staying close to the issues and following things very closely.
Yes, it is, and also contacting the various chairs, like the voter service chair. We need to update the directory of elected officials. The old one is still up there, but they're still working on it, and so you have to work with other members of the board to ask them to update material so that it can be uploaded to the website. So there is a little time involved in that and work on that.
And now, of course, with the website at the local level and then at the state level, it's kind of, you have a face, so to speak, for the whole world to see.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's much more advertisement for the organization in that regard.
Right. And the state league, and I think also at the local, during election season, we do get a lot of hits on the website, especially in October and November. It just really spiked. Actually, about September it begins, but October it really spiked, where people do use the league's website. Of course, we also have links to the Secretary of State's office, which has the voter registration form, so that anything to make it easier for the voter. And that is what a lot of the the website is all about, so that the voter can be informed about their government, and about particular issues if the league has issues on a particular topic.
So the League's mission to educate and to kind of engage voters in their democracy,
Yes.
has just changed over time with mass communications changes.
Yes.
And you've really gone with the flow, so to speak.
Right, you have
keep
to.
up with it.
Right. And also the reason people go to the League website is that we're nonpartisan. We do not support or oppose any political candidate. And I know there's a question out there, well, how can you be nonpartisan if you oppose or support this particular issue? Well, we do study it, and we do take advocacy. That's what we do to better inform the public. But we don't support or oppose a particular candidate. Now, sometimes a candidate may be for this issue or against this issue, but we're not for or against that particular candidate. And I think sometimes that gets confusing, but the reason people do use our website is that they know that we are nonpartisan. So we do keep the two separate. But we put out there, yes, we do take action on specific issues that we have studied.
I can see where there might be, as you just described, a little bit of tension around
Election time.
around election time
Right.
for
There
people. And
is.
of course, the League individual members have their own
Oh, yes.
political ideas and
Yes.
positions. So, but within the League, you kind of leave that outside the door and kind of bring.
Actually, we encourage League members to be politically active. It's only if you're a board member that you cannot be politically active when you're on the board.
Okay.
And so, yes, we've had women be city council members on school boards. And we do have members who cannot be a board member because they are politically active, where they actually go and support or oppose a particular candidate. But the League itself does not support or oppose any candidate. So again, there's a line there. And so for the women who, and men who are politically active, they cannot serve on the board. Okay.
So
For that time period
right.
that they're on the board. Okay.
right.
Right, okay.
But they can just simply be members. And
That's
fine.
correct. They can be members.
Yeah.
They can speak out against or for an issue. They may not use the name of the League of Women Voters.
You sort of remind me now of a theme that has come up in the oral histories, and that is that the League can provide sort of an experiential and educative basis that kind of allows women to enter politics. Would you have any comment about that?
I think it has a lot in the city of Boulder from what I've read in the history. But today there's other ways that women can become involved politically and become a city council member. But I think the League still has a place where for some women they do learn the skills within the League structure. And it gives them confidence to go out and maybe run for a political office. But again, times have changed, the culture has changed. And so there's many more avenues for women today than it was even in the 80s, 70s and 80s. But I think the League is still very much a viable organization. It's not a social club. It really, and I think that's different because it really isn't a social club. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of women had said that the discussions are stimulating and educational, and that is one reason why they join the League. I mean, we still have members who join for that particular reason, and that it's nonpartisan. So that's the reason that they join.
Right. So over time, then you could just say that maybe, Janet Roberts or Ruth Carell, Maggie Markey,
Oh,
maybe
yes.
got their start sort
Oh,
of
yes.
through the league and
Uh-huh.
then expanded
Yes.
their political role within the city.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that statement.
So, and I noticed that you do have in your handbook there that there are lists of people that have served
Yes.
in all kinds of public capacities. So that's, I think, another, maybe you could call that maybe a service of the league, that women are willing to go out there and also then serve in the government too.
Yes, and we still have women today, league members, who become an expert in their field from study, and they will be appointed to boards, even at the state level. So leaguers still fill those roles or become on boards or commissions and use their expertise, and this is recognized because they are a league member and that they have studied the issues.
Well, great. Were there issues over the years within your Boulder time that really grabbed your attention? Were there any particular league positions that really captured your imagination and that you wanted to work with?
I think affordable housing was one. Land use was another. Remember many discussions on that. The structures of city government, I found that very fascinating because we had to look at the city of Boulder, Lafayette, and Louisville. And so to me that was quite interesting and educational as we studied those structures. So I think those were some of the main issues. I was really much more involved in voter service activities, in the ballot issues and researching the pros and cons, moderating at the candidate forums, and so forth. I think that's what I really enjoyed.
Well, good. How would you say over the years you've noticed how the Boulder city government or county government or even the Louisville government received the League of Women Voters? Sort of what was the interconnection there? And
I think it was always positive, because I know in the city of Louisville, and the city of Lafayette also, we did candidate forums. We could use the city council chambers. And I think at the city of Lafayette, we did that the last time, I believe, in the local candidate forum. The same in Superior. They've asked us to do the candidate forum. At one, I don't know how many years ago, Netherlands also asked us. There was a very contentious election, and so they asked the league to moderate the candidate forums.
Wow.
Maybe it was the school board, but I can't remember exactly. I'm sorry, but I just can't remember exactly. But I know that we were asked to do that. So sometimes we're asked to do the candidate forum, especially if it's very contentious.
That is very interesting. That's the role that you've played. Do you think that the League of Women Voters usually plays that role, or are there other civic organizations that get in there and do that?
There's other civic organizations. They will have breakfasts, and I know this last year, last November, it wasn't local elections, but it was the county and some state, and actually one party would not participate, so we had to cancel the candidate forums. But on the local level, the cities, we still do the candidate forums. But you're right, there are other organizations that do that now. And they have breakfasts and so forth, and there may be 2 or 3 different organizations. So candidates having to go to all these different forums, I think they really have to choose, I guess, which one they want to go to. Locally, we still do the local ones. although the candidates may go to a breakfast and something like that. But the candidate forums are televised, and so we still do the local ones.
Good. So there's a variety of ways then that,
There
once
is.
again, that the voters can be informed.
Right, and now, of course, with the new technology, you've got Facebook and all these other types of electronic that they're up there immediately. So I think the electronic age has really changed the landscape. The voter can find out much more information than they could previously.
And just from the comfort of their own computer
Comfort of
room.
their home,
Huh?
yes. So it's really changed. You don't have to go out to a meeting.
Well, I know I do have a question that might be a little bit involved, and believe it or not, we're sort of getting to the end of the
Okay.
tape. But I know that the League does try to improve the sort of democratic governance at every level of government. And what do you think the significant democratic practices that the League hopes will be observed or carried out?
Well, we have positions on civil liberties. We have positions on voter registration. And I think those are the two main issues. Right now, especially voter registration. And we do have positions also on immigration. That is really now in the forefront. But I think that those are some of the main issues today that the League is working for.
So these particularly then sort of involve access to citizenship and actually, doing your civic duty.
Doing your civic duty, yes.
Right, and having that process be open for people or accessible.
Yes, and that people are educated about the ballot issues so that they can vote intelligently when this happens. But I would say that's it. Now, of course, there's a lot of other issues at the national, state level that I could go into, but it really is about fairness and equality, I think.
Well, that's about the end of this tape, and
Okay.
I'm wondering if we should continue or if you feel that the interview is over.
I think the interview is over.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much, Liz Nick, and really appreciate your participation.
Thank you.